Thank you so much, Lexi and crew. Thank you for handing it over, though I'm not entirely sure what you've handed over at this point. It's been something, that's for sure. I am Initialized. I am joined by Nymera. We
You
are
are.
here to bring it back, be very serious and intense here as we're about to bring into a hell of a best of 5
And
series.
they wanted to know our thoughts. I like the LJL. It's pretty okay. That's mainly my thoughts.
Not you too.
I think one of the best things about this kind of day, because this is a very special day for us there on the LJL, is that this will be our fourth finals as a broadcast, and we have seen DFM in every single one of them. They are the constant, that timeless feature of the LJL, and we have seen them felled just that one time when we've been covering it. That was by V3. Do I think this is maybe a similar situation? No, I think it is different. I think it's a very different style of team we're getting out of Rascal Jester, a different contender to the throne, but it's by no means a lesser threat. We saw what happened in that Juggernaut match, and I'm incredibly excited to see what Rascal Jester can do now that DFM's up the ante with that 3-0 in the semifinals.
Yeah, and I've got to call it out as well that this isn't the first time we've seen this script. If you flip back the history book pages and go to spring 2020, DFM lost in the Juggernaut match to Sengoku in a very similar series. They then 3-0'd their opposition in the semifinals and came on
Who were V3.
who were V3. This time, of course, it was Axis who kind of inverted the script a little bit and then went on to demolish Sengoku Gaming in the finals. And in fairness, part of that was Sengoku Gaming, unfortunately, not turning up to play. Melvin, as I'm sure, is listening in and being horrified that it's not the first time this has happened to the team. He put so much faith in this split, but the point stands. I expect Rascal Jesters to stand up and fight this time. I think it is naive to assume they won't. They've got the veterancy there. But DFM in finals are a very different beast.
So about the whole Rascal Jesters are going to stand up and fight. Rascal Jesters will prove a threat. What was your prediction, Sam?
I think 3-0 DFM.
There we go. So there is something to be said about the narrative that we must present on one hand, and then actual when money gets put on the line, we're not betting money.
All I'm saying is I am at the top of the predictions charts, tied with our producer Reed. I've gone 3-0, he's gone 3-1. So
actually, the winner of the predictions is based off of today's results.
Potentially, exactly.
Will DFM burger flip at Herald? Will they skirmish their way into a loss, or will they get to team fights and will they win?
Yeah, and there are some questions because I actually do want to give some credit, but for all that I do probably favor DFM, even if I've obviously been quite extravagant with my prediction. I still think that, obviously Rascal Jesters, to give credit to them and to point where a lot of their strengths lie, are kind of around things like they really did a good job of picking apart some of DFM's weaknesses that I don't think they realized they quite had, which was that kind of 10 to 15 minute mark when they're setting up for their map roams, their kind of global plays that they love to do, and get Gang and Ebby and Ari are all on the same place to really run over a lane and take over games with like Herald pushes and stuff. And Jesters were a step ahead of them and punished them a lot doing that. If you look right through to like game 5 when it starts snowballing out of control, game 3 as well, even with the draft, slight difficulties there for DFM. Like it gets even worse by the fact that the likes of Secret was just everywhere in that early game.
That's definitely one factor. However, with all of that put together, and I do think there are some draft worries too. I think that DFM realized that actually shouldering 5 bans and a takeaway pick in mid lane from Arya does not give your all-star potential MVP player the tools to 1v9 at this point. Not against, as the strongest cream of the crop champions in that mid lane. We saw that Rascal Jesters went towards the Syndra time after time after time. And that's going to be a big pick for me to watch alongside picks like Thresh. Kallista's going to be big in there. Varus, lots of picks in that bot lane and isolating that 2v2 to be a point of concern for either Utpon or, of course, Sol on the other side of it. But if you're shouldering that many bans onto this massive carry in the mid lane, you need to make sure you're not giving a strong blind pickable champion over to Recap 2. We saw it on the graphics. We saw that matchup. It's very much favored in Arya's advantage, but you need to make sure you're actually giving the tools for that to actually be a blowout win condition.
And compared to some other mid laners, Recap has actually consistently matched quite well into Arya over this split. Guy comes in having retired for a bit, restarts this year, and actually does a pretty damn stellar job. And again, in summer, he's turned up, and things like his Zoe and his Syndra have been genuinely very, very good. And he's been able to pick them into Arya, and Arya has
And-
played well in things like the skirmish and the team fights. But he has had a couple
Yeah.
times where recaps been able to strike some blows back, which gives some hope for Jesters fans.
And you know what's awesome about this conversation? A year ago, when we were talking about qualifying for Worlds the last time, we sat down as a crew. It was actually just the three of us back there. Oh, no, because we had people on the desk. But we were, talking through playoffs before that. We had like our overarching narratives, because you have to do that. You have to string along some people and say, all right, this is the message that we want to communicate. And one of the things was that so many people in the international community, not ourselves actually, I think that we had some worries, but we're okay with this, thought that the LJL did not have the individual talent, didn't have the brute mechanics, didn't have the players that maybe the PCS, the VCS, the TCL have. But then you get players coming through, like from last year, Archer, Boogie. This year, we have Arya coming up onto an all-star team. We have the rest of DFM. And we have not talked about that since MSI. We have thrown that out the window. We have seen that you can send a first seed of a major region at us, and we will fight. And actually, we can win. There's the possibility there. It's not just a losing battle. It's not a Pyrrhic victory. These players have a real chance to make a dent internationally. And we are, whoever progresses from today, looking at these teams and saying, this is the Holy Grail. This is the Golden Chalice. Take us to a world group stage. Get out of play-ins. Become this legendary team for the LGL that we've been waiting for so long. And you know what? It feels like the time's right.
Feels about okay. And those are some heavy expectations. These are some big stakes. They don't get bigger here in the LGL.
Unless you're Alistair.
Unless you're Alistair.
That's the one.
There is a lot of chance we see Alistair,
there
both
is.
Gang and
big
Secret,
stakes.
do enjoy playing the cow in the bot lane. I'm going to try and take that on board and move on.
Good. I'm glad you listened to me.
I had a half thought that you might make a pun about Alistair there, and I was hoping you wouldn't. And yet, here we are. I should have known better, really. But here, the point is that LJL stakes are quite large, as are Alistair's. But the point is, moving on to Worlds, like that is where the stakes rise up again. And that's kind of what you're playing for here, is to be that one representative. You don't get to be a second or a third seed in an LJL. You don't get to be second best. Worlds is this or bust. And it comes down to a series on the day. And that is always a scary position to be in. And it's why both of these teams having a fair amount of veteran talent is potentially good news. It should mean that there's a little bit of experience there in terms of pressure situations. I'll say that the Jesters players, while they might be veteran, aren't all veterans at winning, though. And that potentially is my one worry.
And for those of you who are not aware, this is the Rascal Jesters as an organization, and for these players in some cases too, first final in 7 years. It has been 7 years since Rascal Jester in 2014 won themselves one title and got themselves to another final. Since then, a barren streak. And this is where actually this rivalry of the LGL TSM versus CLG kind of comes into a bit of fruition. At some point, this was the highlight marquee matchup of the LJL. It fell into obscurity. We had Pentagram, we had Rampage. And lately, it's actually been V3 as well as the competitors to DFM, because DFM were always the other name in that. It's not like there's that third tier of like the TL, TSM, C9 kind of rivalry. You kind of mix and match them up. DFM have always been the mainstay there, but what an awesome story it has been, where we see this looping narrative where Rascal Jesters come back to the fold. We thought maybe it would happen in spring 2020, where regular season they came back as third place in the regular season, and they looked fantastic. Knocked out in the first round, didn't get to face DFM. In summer, fell apart, visa issues, contract issues. They had to put in a lot of rookies. And then they go from the blank slate again. They drop some of the best players in this region. Art down in there. You see Vivid, one of the most storied supports in this region. They pick up Stolen Secret, who are from middling to bottom tier LCK teams. They pick up, from Spenny. And they pick up a new coach as well. And then you look at these three and you think, well, okay, what can you do with this? You're picking up a rookie as well, and some players that have come back from retirement recap. What can this team do? And it turns out they could do a hell of a lot.
Quite a lot. Yeah, no.
They can finish so high up in the regular season. They can contend with their very best teams, and they can light this league aflame in a very different way from a lot of the other teams that we've seen.
And they have to be able to do that again today. It's going to be a hard one, obviously. It's looking like potentially, Joshi's calling this one a 5-game series. And there is absolutely a world where it goes that way.
Just a quick 3-0, as we like to say.
I'm calling potentially for a 3-0, because I wonder whether we do actually get some strong adaptations with the 11-16. And actually, for things that Jess has had planned for that initial series, I wonder how deep that barrel goes. And if DFM have had a chance to come up with some answers to it, then do Jesters
Well,
have option? And that's my potential
yeah.
take, even if it is a little out of left field.
Sure. And for all of our grandstanding and making narratives, I mean, DFM were very much in the advantage from most of that series, right? They should have won that best of 5.
Sure.
They should have done. You look at that game too, they had that advantage. Yes, they snowballed a bit late, and through exemplary play from particularly Sol and Secret, we saw that DFM got picked apart. They got picked off. I also think that maybe they should have played more than one game of Rise. Maybe they should have played another game of Twisted Fate, something like that. We saw that come out in Axis. As Melvin was saying, there's only one game that Aria has lost on a global/roaming champion, the early pressure kind, that they've lost the whole year. That was one LeBlanc game.
Yep.
In actually, I'm not so sure. And even in that,
LeBlanc was one TF game.
One TF game.
First week of summer.
It's like,
it was where he died, comes back in, gets gnawed into a wall. Wasn't the best look for Ori. Hasn't really done it since. But no, if you want a clip of what could go wrong for DFM in the mid game,
but week 1 summer DFM is a very different beast from DFM in any other given week or time during this year. You know, this is a player which has to take 2 or 3 bans just in the first phase. You're going to ban Aurelia, you're going to ban LeBlanc, and most of the time you're going to pick away something like a Syndra.
Or take the Nidalee.
Or take the Nidalee as well. Lots of different stuff. So if DFM goes back towards their semi-global into roaming side lane threats, I don't know if our Rascal Jesters have the picks to deal with that style of play. They do tend to play through a very dominant bot side, and that doesn't work if the rest of your map is just on fire.
Turns out your map being on fire is largely
like Sol and Secret. They're just on the yacht. They're chilling.
Yeah,
they've
down
got
in the river in bot lane. Yeah, the rest of the map's on fire. We're fine. Yeah.
Yeah, they like their waves, not frozen but chilled. They like them chilled.
Gosh, that was your pun. Oh no.
Like, drinks, cool, ice, frozen, sure, all that stuff. But they're doing fine in that individual lane. But it just seems like as soon as DFM put together a cohesive early game team, can't Rascal Jesters struggle with that? So what I'm looking for really is Rascal Jesters, can you rekindle that magic to stop DFM getting those early advantages and punish them in that, that even not even just like the 10 to 15 minute, like the 5 to 15 minute mark is where they hit hardest in game 5, right from that level 1. How good is your prep at that point? Can you get under DFM's skin and rattle them?
So, of course, Alex, like myself, does enjoy his predictions shaken, not stirred.
Yes, I do.
Hoping to see something shaken up. I believe we'll be heading into pick and ban.
Whoa, DFM 3-0. Whoa.
And I'm holding that one up. There will be no context given at this time. Only in-game plays will validate my my spiciness. Until then, we are getting ready to go to pick and ban. And at this point, I kind of potentially do want to start looking around some potential ideas about what you expect to see in like those first phase of picks and bans. What do you want to see in terms of first picks? What do you want to see in terms of bans? Anything you actually think needs to change from the last series from either team to really find an edge here, so, if there is one to be found?
One of the big changes that we saw in that Juggernaut match was Hatchemetra didn't actually feel like he had to go towards Jinzao a lot.
Yeah.
He had actually an incredible Lee Sin.
Yeah, Lee Sin was good.
And in the words of Joshi, who we were talking with in the green room for our prep for the semifinals, he was like, yeah, so Hatchemetra, like every time I look at him, I just kind of realize he's there. Effectively was the same effect. But I don't really think that Hatchemetra is the player that's going to pop off. I've not really been that impressed. I think that changed in the Juggernaut match. Juggernaut match was the one where I sat there thinking, okay, that Lee Sin kick midway through that dragon fight, the one that made it on Sway onto the highlight reels, that showed that this player still has that upper end of talent, their upper end of ability, which I'm very excited to see here today. So I think that Lee Sin, potentially a big option outside of that. Jinzao as well. It's a big playmaker. Outside of that, I mean, Renekton's been very good for Kanatu. I think that Kennen could come into this series at some point too, if we're picking a lot of Nars and the like. We already talked about mid lane pool. Syndra, all of your global mids and the roaming mids. And then bot lane, Varus is a big one. Aphelios is a huge one. There's going to be Thresh. There's going to be Leona. It's kind of hard to pin it down to one different pick because I think at this point, you're going to see a lot of these teams, well, both these teams, probably go back to the drawing board in some extent and say, all right, where did the hammer fall the hardest against us in that last series? What can we do to mitigate that or nullify it?
Questions that are...
Just not Akali. Don't pick Akali into Alistair. It doesn't work very well.
Yeah, Akali, when you're the soul diving threat, when there's an exhaust Alistair, does make things quite difficult. But enough of us prevaricating. Enough of us making really dumb cold drink jokes because we have pick and ban on screen for the finals here in the LJL in summer of 2021. Rascal Jesters, you can see on the blue side, Detention FocusMe over on the red. And the bans for Rascal Jesters are no surprise at all. LeBlanc, Irelia, Nidalee, they did it all the time in the Juggernaut match. They seem to have started off the same tack here in the finals.
But DFM have banned the Syndra.
They have.
First big adaptation coming in from that Juggernaut match. How important is this now for Recap not to have that more safe blind pickable mid lane? And actually, does this allow DFM to say, actually, screw it, we don't need to pick mid now, we can go towards our other lanes because you don't have that safe blind pick. Yes, you'll have something like an Orianna. They actually say, no, let's take the Rise immediately. That's one of those key champions you didn't ban.
They left the Rise open, they've taken the Callista off as well. Rascal Jesters first picked the Renekton. It is a flex, of course, you can throw it to the mid lane, but we're expecting it to go towards Kinatsu, who's done a really good job with that. Ebby's answer historically has been things like the Tahm Kench or the Gnar. He does play a bit of things like Camille and the likes of it, but it's just not really what has been his option this split, generally speaking. Response from the Jesters, Sol's oh so famous Ezreal now.
So we saw Honey try and carry on this in the semi-finals, and of course Axis bad out 0-3 in that one due to some incredible team fighting from DFM. They managed to close down that pick. As I was saying, Recap without that Syndra, look, they are effectively a Seros 2.0 in a lot of ways. They play control mages, that's their calling card. They occasionally play something like a Yone, but that's the only thing outside of the envelope that they have sealed for themselves. It's the Orianna coming in. Rise is a matchup which is more than fine into that for Arya. You're expecting this to come down to the team fights the Orianna, and you're hoping that the map hasn't exploded by that point, whereas DFM, they have themselves that Gnar, gives you the ability to actually push in the wave, get some priority in the early stages of the game, and that's difficult now for Kanatu and Hatchemetcha, because if there's a Rise realm warping up to join them, that top lane has a huge target on its back.
It's comfort across the board right now for both teams. We've got top, we've got mid, we've got bot, all locked in, all characters, all champions that all these players are incredibly confident, incredibly practiced on. Sol's Ezreal, as we've said, is one of the things that has taken down DFM in the past. You're looking over at Ebby's Gnar of all things, you know. The list goes on and on. Second phase of bans now is going to be looking surely towards junglers and supports.
And there is such an interesting thing here about no junglers picked in the first phase. And that is something which we do not often see in modern drafting, in terms of what we've seen on the current patch. We hadn't seen the Viego, which is now banned away. We hadn't seen, and that's of course why we see both these players going towards those bans in this second phase. But it's very interesting to me that both of these junglers think that they can actually shoulder a couple of those bans themselves. You know, we kind of talked about that, use that phrasing towards Arya, but we saw this not work out at MSI even for DFM. They're like, oh, we'll go pick last pick Hecarim when it just been nerfed. That didn't work so well. Now we have 3 more bans put onto that jungle pool. The Trundle, of course, could be put down to that support as well. You are severely lacking those jungle matchup clues now. And the question is, DFM, do you lock in someone like a Leona and get yourself counterpick now that, of course, so many are off the table? Or is there a last counterpick that you want to get in? Jinzo and Lee Sin have made their way through the bans either way.
Gotta be the trade, surely.
So it doesn't feel like you've denied all of the most important ones.
I mean, the thing is, Viego, Diana are such big 2-item scaling junglers. I can see why you might ban those out. I am a little surprised by the Viego ban against DFM because they've just not put a lot of priority onto it at all. But that's to say, I suppose they don't play it. Maybe they just don't prioritize it that much, I suppose, is a question we have to ask a little bit. But it's been fine for now. At least that's been Rascal Jesters' read, rather, is a better way of putting that. And now I'm looking down to see what the response from Jesters are. Hatchemetcha has gone towards the Jarvan before and will lock it in here. Level 2 ganks potentially ahoy.
Papametcha going towards that king in the jungle. And of course now you've got the Jarvan Ori combo. You have a way to lock down that backline. And I love actually both of these junglers into the enemy comps already, because you look at Ezreal, you look at Orianna. As soon as the Crescent Guard's up, they do functionally nothing for a handful of seconds. That allows DFM this window of ascendancy where they get to do as they please. However, their own carries are going to now be in serious worry from the big wombo combos. You can't exactly pick off something like an Alistar though, and that's being hovered for DFM to be an extra point in favor of them for frontline tendencies.
Just saying, the last time Secret picked the Rel into Utapon's Varus died twice in 2 consecutive moments and cost DFM game 2. It's not entirely on Utapon. That's partly on Secret being really good.
And also there was a Callista involved there.
And
We'll add that in.
Exactly. So there was obviously a massively extended engage range. Either way, Jesters, hard engage, big ball carriers for Orianna as well. And then you've also got things like the Ezreal to throw in damage on top. DFM, a little bit more ability to split the map wide with the Rise, with the Gnar.
So, for me, I'm looking at DFM, and I'm worried for Rascal Jester because you have largely a winning top lane matchup, a mid lane matchup which is going to lose priority most of the time, at least when you come to that level 3 mark when Rise can start bouncing the Essence Flux around. And bot lane has a Varus, so you're not likely to start pushing that in and getting a huge amount of priority. Bot lane, of course, is a little bit different because the support matchup, of course, helps with that, which means that Arsenal needs to hold the combo more often than not. But when you have such powerful lanes for powerful individual players in DFM, as much as Rascal Jesters do have that individual brawn, particularly in that 2v2 on bot side, and Kanatu has obviously stepped up to match Ebby in a number of these series, I think that there is more to work with for steal over Hatchemetcha in the early game in terms of the lane state. So Hatchemetcha is going to have to almost play to bail out their lanes rather than Steel playing to exacerbate the problems that his lanes are causing.
Some slight concerns there from Nymera, which honestly I share. I'll add, though, that if it does come down to team fighting, and we saw this a little bit, we've had this conversation before as casters and behind the scenes with people like Joshi and the rest of the analysts in our community in general, that Jesters are potentially the best team fighting team in the league, above DFM, because DFM suddenly sometimes have that kind of too many chefs in the kitchen vibe, where they all try to do different things, but they're all so used to popping off that they end up not always being on the same page. Sometimes it's phenomenal, but they can pull a bit of a G2 if that makes sense. And this is a team comp where it hits 2-3 items, and you go Jarvan, Shockwave, Ezreal and Rel come in alongside the Renekton, and you destroy people around objectives.
If you load up the blunderbuss, you put all of your shot into the chamber and you fire it out, and Rise flashes away from the combo, that's a teamfight loss.
Or
that's a teamfight loss.
Or Xinzao gets to Crescent Guard all of you out. Exactly. You've got to make sure that engage lands, or it gets really scary.
All well and good, like firing off that combo, but if it's into a Crescent Guard and it's into an Unbreakable Will from Alistar, and they actually tank up the first part of it, they can turn around, use that one combo, even at the cost of their life, to get into the backline, and then it's a fighting retreat from Rascal Jest at that point. Because if Rise gets to go forward, and again, Arya showed that pick to such high levels against Axes in their series, and they're 3-0 over them. I am, again, very worried for Rascal Jester. One of the real reasons I thought Rascal Jesters were lucky to get away with that Juggernaut match was, I mean, Arya had never really gotten to the big scaling global picks, which allow you to play all phases of the game. I used to be a big fan of playing, the Renekton Rise. I thought that a team like Evil Geniuses over in NA, before they kind of collapsed in playoffs, were very good about playing that style themselves. Now, having the Gnar is not the same as the Renekton, but it still gives you some early priority. It gives you the ability to dive top lane as well and become a threat in teamfights. It still gives you that bridge from the early game priority, play make into the mid game, and then just scale into infinity.
Okay. Heard Nymera's read.
No. Read is
Read the producer.
We're not hearing them. They're producer. They're muted.
Name puns. That's what we're devolving to at this
I get
point.
All right. 3 a broadcast.
That you've done 2 before game 1 has even started.
It's no secret I love them.
Oh,
so there we go. That's my quota done. You'll be happy that I'm done for this finals.
I'm gonna gang up on you with the rest of the caster team and make you regret those. I am now also complicit in this. We're on to the Rift. Detention FocusMe versus Rascal Jesters for this finals. Oh yes, there is this kind of advert in the LJL. You love it. Game on, yells the advertising man. And we are here with some interesting positions at this level 1. Yes, it's a 5-man fan, but watch those level 1 wards. Secret's already gone and put one very deep into that kind of middle bush in the bot lane. It's such a priority ward. Hatchemetcha uses the flag to scout out Steel. So both junglers have a rough idea about where their opponent is right now.
And one thing which is actually I do want to pay attention to in the level 1 is look down towards that bot lane on the minimap. You can see there's a ward in that middle bush in the bot lane. That can be very important for getting brush control early on. Now, that's not always the most important thing, but when you have Varus, Ezreal, you have these free targeted skill shots which do make a difference early on because you're looking for that poke, that can actually help you control the lane early. We did kind of say, yes, Varus is hard to unsee it in the laning phase, but actually its support matchup is quite coin flippy in this bot lane. Well, this actually, that ward down there, could help Rascal Jesters get a bit of an early advantage in bot lane, if a minimal one.
All right, checking over some of the runes here. Nothing super unusual. The only thing I'll call out, of course, the Halo Blades Varus, which is pretty standard anyway. It used to be even more common with things like the Prowler's Claw Tech, and That's a Twitter vote. Unsurprising considering the massive fan base of Detention FocusMe have.
So we do see the Hachimetra has started on the bot, so going straight down towards Krugs. We don't see a red into immediate bot lane gank. I was potentially wondering if that was an option. Gives us old Peanut vibes, old Ambition vibes even. So it's actually, as you see,
good interrupt.
Good. It wasn't actually interrupted, it was just dodged out by Yutapon. You can see the damage coming through. Heavy damage coming from Rascal Jesters early.
I thought Gang managed to interrupt it with the pulverize there. Or was that just a knock-up afterwards?
I believe that was just the knock-up afterwards.
Okay, there you go. Okay, well, there you go. Not quite. AI bot giving a slight advantage to DFM right now. As Kinatu goes in for a bit of a trade, but will take some hyperprocs back at the end of it all. And of course, Ebby's got Mega Gnar coming up, so he's feeling very happy about stepping forward and starting to charge. Gets the crunch forward to Kinatu, who's in a lot of trouble here, actually. Boulder Toss lands him. I think he needs to flash. One more Boulder Toss would do it, and he's going to hold his nerve and gets away with it, but he's going to have to reset.
No pots, no problems, no deaths, though, at least for Kinatu, as they hold their nerve. However, this is still early advantage over to that now, and this is one of the worries. The top side for DFM does seem like it does all of its own stunts. It will set itself up from any one of its 3 members, and Kinatu has now blown a very early teleport, meaning that, okay, it's all well and good that you've survived the early play. If you die now, if you die to a top lane roam, Kinatu is going to get absolutely shunted out of this game, losing so much for their time.
Got to be aware as well that Secret and Soul managed to extricate themselves from the lane briefly to put a ward down on Steel's Gromp. He's not caught it with the sweeper either, so I think he's just going to head straight over to the Scuttle Crab and take that instead. But that is that going down. I'm pretty sure with where the camps are at. I need to see how many camps he's taken, but it's looking like, of course, with Hatch and Metro on the other side.
Oh, that's water walking on Rise, by the way. This is what you do. You just, actually, you know those runes that we were talking about earlier? So the water walking's on there, in there. Also, having Time Warp Tonic, Biscuit's Corrupting Potion means that you cannot do anything about Rise's early laning phase. He's always going to be full mana, always going to be full HP, and has the ability to blow open the map early. I think Arya doesn't even feel like he needs to go for something like a Ravenous Hunter, just as, I'm just going to do everything myself in this early game, and again, be that bridge into the scaling which we know that this champion has.
Hachimetra now looking to see whether he can get onto these Krugs respawning. They should be up relatively soon. Of course, Steel still on vision from that ward. It has finally popped, but he's going to be around and about as well. Might look into do a Krugs start himself, but with Recap shoved up, I wonder whether it might be an Orianna gank time instead.
Actually, and this is one of, again, issues with this AD-AP duo. There is no Jarvan to respond to this, and Arya, I mean, he did this on Aurelia, but for very different reasons, because that's more kill threat.
Recap,
just freezing the wave outside of the tower, and Orianna knows that. The Xin Zhao is somewhere in River. He's going to be denied a couple of minions. He is going to get himself the cannon at least. Arya takes a heavy trade as recompense for that.
Spell Flux, Overload, EQ, that combo is just Rise, bread and butter, especially if you can get in a Rune Prison to hold people in place for a few more of those. Feel pretty happy about it, but Arya doing his best to make sure Recap's time on the Rift is a tricky one. Steel back on vision again, as these early wards from Rascal Jesters to track him have been pretty effective thus far.
They have been. But with all of this tracking involved, Secret face checking the bush. Gang uses the pop to keep them in pace, headbutts and says, all right, wait, I can't cancel that that crash down anymore. Best get them away from me. Top lane going, of course, very well for DFM right now as Ebby uses their first teleport to reset at this moment. Kanatsu is still down, of course. Bot lane, though, actually pretty happy not to be fighting for Rascal Jesters because they started with that tip for the Ezreal. They don't really see a way to break open this lane, and honestly, can't blame them. It's an Alistar after all, with that Varus, one of the more safe bot lanes that you do see in this current meta. And as much as DFM have some early playmaking on the top side, as much as Hachimetra has that himself on the jungler, it's been more of a calculated affair, a bit more of a chess match, a bit more of scouting out the opposition, and nothing's come to the fore so far.
No, not as yet. Hachimetra now hanging around mid lane, wanting to see whether there's a potential option, especially now that Recap has hit the level 6. That means Shockwave's on the borders. Ivy goes in, and Kinatu needs to flash. He's got to get out of that one and does so. But that was a beautiful use of the boulder toss, and of course that transformation hop into crunch to get behind the Renekton. Kinatu going to have to back again, very low HP. He's got no teleport, so he's just going to lose a fair amount here, especially now the Hachimetra will show on the top wave to make sure that Ebby doesn't get much for it. It's in trade now for an early dragon as a result.
So we often talk about in League of Legends the big game players, the players which will, when push comes to shove, stand up and be counted for. And Ebby was that for us at MSI as a region, as the LJL. And Ebby in this finals trying to get towards yet another international event for this player starts taking this by the scruff of the neck. takes the matchup, and Kanatu has been, of course, such a standout rookie, maybe the best rookie we've had in this region ever, even, has come up, but he's getting ganked. He has a flash, he's got Mega.
He's going to try and hop away. He's got Flash still. Going to get Mega very soon. It'd be a pretty difficult one to pull off. There's going to be a Cataclysm coming. There's Mega coming through. Ebby trying to fight this one out. Gets a double. Crunch needs to get away. And with the tower there, doesn't even need to bloody well Flash. Ebby, so well played.
Because, of course, he understands Kanatu has no Flash, has no Slice and Dice, cannot actually get inside the Cataclysm. Hatchemet's first ult of the game does not achieve anything. Ari's found Prio, has found a Realm Up, has found bot lane.
And here come DFM. Double Flash pull! First blood goes to Unipon. Now Secret needs to get on out. Gang's going to go down to the tower, but it'll still be a 2-for-1 in trade.
That's going to be a cannon wave loss. There is no response across the map. We see Ebby having to back off from that top lane after that earlier play, so he's going to lose some waves, but that hammer blow we're talking about, it falls in favor of DFM. It's a kill and assist over to Arya and onto Utapon, and the kill sadly goes over to Secret with no assist for the Ezreal. Sol gets nothing out of this defensive play, this disengaging play on the bot lane, doesn't get anything for it. And this is, of course, the difference between DFM with Rise, with one of these global champions. Melvin Izzle set it up so well on the desk, and we saw it here. It's not even just the double pull, it's the minion taxi off of your damn support. We saw it actually yesterday in the semi-finals, using that headbutt to get closer into that flash pull range, and finds both of their targets waiting.
It was so well played, but now DFM going to start up the Herald, and here come Rascal Jesters. They're thinking contesting. Ezreal's not here, but the whole of DFM are. They've rotated all members up. Now Utapon just hanging out between mid lane and the river. Herald is secured, and DFM now going to try and back out. Watch Hatchemet, though. He might look for something onto Steel here and does so. But that's a decent Crescent Guard out. The Retract Repel coming onto Steel. He's got into that Crescent Guard. Ebby in a difficult position, but now Hatchemet has to flash one out. But an overload comes through from Arya. And now Rascal Jesters need to retreat. Recap has got Shockwave. May need to use it to disengage. But an attack command will dissuade any further trade from DFM. They get a kill, they get out. Hatchemet blows their flash as well. It's a disaster.
It's Jinzhou Gaming is what it is. You go in as the Jarvan, all well and good, but we pointed this out very early. What happens if you pop the ult?
Yes.
Pop the ult on the Crescent.
Yes.
Jarvan, with all the buffs put to them, all of that extra damage on the ult and on the passive, cannot finish off the enemy jungler on their own. They can't do that, especially with challenging smites involved with that too. You need something to follow up. But you need to survive the fight for a good, 4 to 5 seconds while that Crescent Guard is on before your teammates, the longer range ones, can actually get damage down onto that jungler. We see that come to the fore there, and DFM walk away with a bit of a freebie fight as Rascal Jesters overplay their hand a little.
I do, and DFM now up about over 1,500 gold. They've got a Herald in inventory, which means significantly more gold is due them at some point once that Herald is used, unless Jesters can find an important stop on that. But just look at some of these lanes. Ebby really getting the better of this top side, even with a gank. He's managed to force Kanatu to back twice, burned his flash. He's not been able to teleport to support things like the bot lane because Ebby has kept him so dangerously low in lane as Kanatu plays silly sods and managed to find his way over the wall in the river to take up a honey fruit and at least be able to stay in lane a little longer this time.
Well, Axis found their way somewhere into the finals. We see the honey fruit there.
That's above your contractual name partner limits.
Sue me. We'll sort it out after finals, as maybe we'll have to sort that one outside as Kanatu and Ebby will continue to brawl into the far future. And what a matchup this has been between these top laners, actually, for this whole split. This whole year, even. This rookie comes in and has the balls, has the cojones to go up in Camille versus Gnar matchups, go up into Ebby's choice champions and beat him on that in a 1v1. This game has not been the best showcase of that. He's struggled in the early lane, he's lost teleports, lost flashes, and Ebby has very much turned up to play on his iconic champion. That alongside his Tahm Kench as well, as you're saying, played that all the way back in 2017 too. And now we see bit of a reset. No one really making big moves across the map. It's a lot of farming. It's a lot of shielding. Steel, of course, has that Herald left to place, and Kanatu continuing to take hard trades. I'm wondering at what point does Steel just go towards top side again and get a free 3 plays?
The other option, of course, for them is to just keep trying to make this bot lane work. Of course, Ebby's doing all this kind of by himself, doing all his own stunts, and maybe just trying to shut down Sol and Secret, who've been so important to this team, would make a lot of sense. Hatchemet is now on vision on a ward down there, so that's finally swept out, but Hatchemet are going to have to reset. Steel is hanging around this river. He's still got Herald for about maybe just a minute or so. I imagine he's probably going to need to use it relatively soon. I think yesterday even we saw a Herald that I believe didn't get used unless it was used in a replay. Myself and Mass One were a little confused as to whether it did get used or not. And Steel needs to think about where he's going to place it. Debating mid lane, especially now with the Dragon Live. It's that old counterweight thing we talk about.
That's certainly a factor. But DFM, even though they have that first Dragon, were actually pre-playoffs the last place team in Dragons per game. They had something like 0.4 Dragons a game. They just didn't give a damn. They didn't care. They could have cared much less. Of course, that Herald is going to be placed mid, as we see that finally. The gold, I'm actually not sure if Aria was close enough to get that. That might have been gold just over towards that Xin Zhao. I was too busy looking at stats.
I believe it's just a Xin Zhao, unfortunately.
Either way, Xin Zhao, of course, we talked about him being such a good temporary front line. Getting up to an earlier Gore Drinker with that extra golden pocket, certainly something to watch out for. As DFM, as we were talking about them, yeah, not really caring about early Dragons, even though that first one goes down. Are not looking to contest this right now. They'd rather, of course, get themselves some gold and accelerate the game in their favor.
They would. And they do so for now. They're going to try and realm warp in for the attempted steal. They're just too late. Nice idea. I appreciate the creativity. Yeah. But about 5 seconds too late on that one.
And this is one of the reasons why I have valued Aria so much. And again, set out those church spells. The sermon is now in service. Welcome to the congregation. Aria on picks like this, Rise, has been so creative. That's the word. You know, he has been the player to pull out the more, the more standard, oh, we'll realm up over towards Baron, get the quick start on there, steal a march on the enemy and burst this down. But also making plays and saying, okay, I'm going to deliver someone to the backline. I'm going to use this not just for a roaming play. I'm going to use this for actually a pseudo-engage tool too. This is a player which is effectively alone in that regard, especially within this region. And DFM playing with this champion, playing with the champions to allow Aria this kind of impact on the game has looked so dominant within this region.
Got to call it out as well. Some of these mythics are starting to come through. It's Ludens for Orianna, which is, not a complete surprise here. It's the standard option at the minute, alongside things like Divine Sunder right now for Sol. Ebby, potentially in an awkward position, but of course it's got Hop and Meganar coming up, so not super worried. But the interesting ones, of course, alongside the Gore Drink,
Rascal Jesters members. 2 of them. They outnumber us 2-1. An even fight then.
Indeed. All right. Paraphrasing Halo 3 aside, I wanted to call out the Umbral Glaive build from Utapon one more time here on the Varus. Has decided he likes that one quite a lot on the champion, especially considering he's sort of been playing a slightly lower econ role on the team, with the priority going towards the top side of the map for DFM.
But one of the things which is now a little bit concerning for DFM, as it was in the series yesterday with Axe, is that, okay, you have early game playmaking tools, you've made some plays, you have made an okay advantage. It's 2,000 gold at 14 minutes. What can you do to accelerate the game to the point where it's effectively uncontestable after that point? Because Rascal Jesters still have their one-bar combo. If they land one good set of skills in one team fight, that can be a Baron, that can be an extra Dragon, that can be the game turning on its head. DFM, you have not closed out this game right now when you often have with this kind of comp. Let's see if you can walk the walk in the skirmishes. The team fights I haven't had as much issue with. I think in the 5v5s they tend to turn this mindset around, but in the skirmishes they have, as you said, had this too many cooks cooks spoiling the broth. They try and go for different things in these skirmishes. Can Rascal Jesters bait them into such a fight? And if so, can DFM stick the landing?
So DFM decides they're going to trade out that second Herald for a first tower here. Utapon gets a hold of that one, and now we'll get to back away. That is so much vision, good lord. The Observer showing us that it is a Christmas tree all decked out in crimson towards the bot side of the map. All the while, Ebby, the single control ward.
September, Sam.
Tell me it doesn't look like a Christmas tree. All the while, DFM, Ebby's managing to get, with a lone control ward in that kind of river bush, is managing to do very similar things towards his top side of the map, and that extends the gold lead to about 3,000 now at about the 15-minute mark, which is very noticeable. That's not bad acceleration, even if the kill count is still relatively tame.
And DFM, of course, they have only lost that one finals they were in, of course, last year. Actually, no, they might have lost a couple to Rampage before that, but still, try not to conjure up Ghosts of LJL past, as Kanati might see himself in a bit of more ethereal realm as the duo goes towards him.
Slice, dice, but there's still a room prison, and Steel eviscerates the crocodile. He does love to find himself some new boots. They look really lovely with the scales all over him.
Christmas did come early. Chaos comes into the mid-jungle 2v2, and the CC chain lasted so long between Everfrost, between Rune Prison, and of course, you're not at liberty to going towards the Merc Treads, as you're right, Hachimacha has gone too deep, and Gang's here to help.
He's going to take pretty low. There goes Gang over the back end of it. That's the Chains of Corruption. He can't go anywhere now. There's going to be a Magna Storming trade, but I think it's too little. I think it's too late. Secret needs to go out. He's down. Gang gets it, and the Unbreakable Will means he gets to walk out as well. I think there was a teleport interrupt as well. No teleport was used. It was Ebby who came in. I apologize. I thought that was one of the Jesters members. Either way, it's DFM that come out with a number of kills, and they are now 6-1 on the board. They're 5,000 gold up.
And this was part of the checklist of the Rascal Jesters. Issues they would need to be aware of coming into these kind of fights. Land the Wombo, all well and good. Just don't put it all onto the Alistair. Don't put it all onto Steel's Jin Zhao as well. Those are the members which can soak that up and survive the fight. In fact, regen through it in the case of Steel as well with the Gore Drinker. Hachimacha caught out, and now there is a very big difference between a Jarvan, which has won the early fights and goes 2-0, compared to the Jarvan, which has lost, gone 0-2, down in XP, down in gold, down as a team, down significantly in gold, actually, across that now in DFM. Well, we kind of asked them to follow through on these skirmishes. Looks like they have done so far, but of course there's a long way to go until this game is done.
Second Herald now summoned in mid lane, and you know why? Because the Ocean Drake has just spawned. Charge comes through, but now Recap caught in a difficult position. There's the Crescent Guard coming out, prevent too much turnaround, but that's a lot of love bars as Gang finds another flank in. Everfrost, that'll be Hachimecha going deep. He gets a Cataclysm, but will not get out. Ebby hopping forwards into the Mega Nah, and he'll get another few. Now Sol and Recap on the retreat. They need to get out. The wind becomes lightning, but the Shockwave lands onto 3, but it's just a disengaged Recap. Now running for the hills with the phase rush, and will surely be able to escape from here, but Ebby around the side, they're still hunting for more. It's not blood in the water, but it sure smells like motor oil. The clockwork winds down, and Orianna is dead as well.
Tick, tock, tick, tock. The time runs out for Rascal Jesters. They tried to play out the early game in a safe, controlled manner, but DFM, of course, have themselves the foot on the accelerator. They're the ones driving this one bus ever towards the cliff edge, towards Oblivion for Rascal Jester, and Gang finds himself off the vision. He finds himself an angle, and it's all well and good that you can flag drag through the Neverfrost. All it does is flag and drag Hachimecha closer towards the grave, whereas Steel doesn't have the same issues, doesn't have the damage to be aware of on those backline carries. And actually this Shockwave, even fishing for that Shockwave, probably gets Recap killed. Is trying to be a bit of a consolation prize, get some chunks out, but realistically, what are you looking for there? The damage is done, the members are dead. I think at that point you cut your losses and you leave, and Rascal Jesters instead compound their issues.
And look at the gold. Leads in every single position. 2,000 for mid and bot. Similar, for about 1.5, 1,000, let's be fair, to Kinatsu in the top side as well for Ebby. It's pretty devastating a lead at this point in the game. We're looking at 6,000 plus gold at this point, nearly 7,000. There's 2 Drakes involved, and that's with only 1 tower having fallen. There is a lot of gold still on the map to be claimed. In fairness, by both teams, but with the way DFM are playing right now, it kind of feels like it's theirs to claim.
I think it is. I think you're very right in saying that. And one of the things which is now really missing from this game is what's happening with Secret. How is Secret going to be able to get himself into this game? It's an ocean rift. There are more bushes to hide in. There's also more scary bushes to face check. You don't have a Callista this game, which is one of the things that we pointed out in terms of, oh, you know, Secret last time was on the rel, caught out Utapon so many times. When you had the extra safety and engageability of the Fate's Call, they don't have that this game. It's out of 1 and 3. Secret gets that 1 kill under tower in that dive, and that's all we've seen out of this player. Every other play has failed to meet its mark, failed to find the members it needs to, and this bot lane from Rascal Jesters, which totaled the Juggernaut match versus DFM, played such a blinding series, is not really present in this game.
Again.
In fact, they're stuck under this turret right now. Secret, can they fight here?
And that's Ebby playing blocker. Mid lane tower's fallen down. It's not a bad Magnet Storm, but the Crescent Guard comes out to block up everything. Kinatsu is dead. Recap now in a difficult position. He gets shunted into the wall and broken into pieces one more time. It's 2 kills to DFM. They get the mid lane turret, and they'll realm warp over. It's an express ticket to Baron Pit.
Oh, they picked themselves up in Orianna. Some assembly required after that. Quick deconstruction from DFM as they will dismantle this Baron to, yes, we talked about the Rise creativity. It also comes along with that set play of let's just go and steal a march on that Baron, burst it down. DFM broke open the game with a 9,000 gold lead at 21 minutes.
And look, it was very similar in the first game of the Juggernaut series. DFM dismantled Rascal Jesters in that game too. And then Aria didn't really get a hold of the Rise, and suddenly...
Funnily enough, that was the Rise game they played
exactly,
in that Juggernaut game,
and it kind of sort of fell apart. Rascal Jesters have shown they can adapt. They have shown they can answer DFM. But it's good to see that DFM have learned from some of their woes as well in that series. The early skirmishes where Secret got the march on them, they've tracked him so much better. We saw the vision control around the bot side. We saw the control. We see it in this replay too as the engage comes through one more time.
And if you have the two lowest damaging members on your team stuck into that tower trying to defend it, there's not really much you can start on the front foot here. You don't have the ability to fly over the top with so much damage. The Orianna is not in range. The Ezreal's not in range. Rarely do you say an Ezreal's not in range, but Rascal Jesters just caught too far apart. DFM get to walk in fairly uncontested there, and once again we see Secret having to land a combo onto the two members which do not give a damn. They don't give a damn. Steel pops the Crescent Guard, Gang pops the ultimate, and suddenly this Rel's impact in that fight, it has to wait for another 13 seconds or so for the next W cooldown.
And the other thing is you had a Mini Gnar who was standing in front of both the Orianna and the Ezreal close to Mega, and they couldn't walk past him. So there was no damage there. So it's like, okay, we're split in half, and we literally cannot walk past the Gatekeeper here. Ebby did a fantastic job on that flank. I thought he was in a bit of danger as he changed to Corruption lands. It's a good stopwatch from Recap to buy some space and will get out. It's a shockwave only onto Gang, who frankly doesn't care and doesn't even get an Unbreakable Willow. That Recap's going to have to retreat. That Orianna ult not going to be able to use for wave clear, not going to be able to use for a turnaround, and now the shove continues. It's going to be both these towers in the mid and top lane down to about a third HP, and Rascal Jesters feeling a little out of answers here.
There is actually danger, because what happens if you Realm Warp a very angry Abby into the backline? It has Flash, has of course the ultimate form, and that was the worry, right? That's why you can actually 3-2 here as DFM, because most of the time if you have a 3-man unit, you can hard engage, but you know you don't have the Shockwave. Even if the Cataclysm comes in from Hachimecha, I think the Realm Warp turns around that fight, and so Rascal Jesters have to give up ground on both fronts, and DFM seems like they understand this composition. You cannot criticize this team for when they do get a finger on the pulse of the game, when they get into the rhythm of it and they get themselves a lead, they know how to push the advantage.
Just look at the inventories. I'm looking at 3 items complete for Utapon. Yes, they're a little cheaper, but then you look over, it's like, yeah, full item over this Ezreal. Looking in the mid lane, it's an item plus, bargain sale. You find that down at Poundland, and I'm looking at the other side, and it's like, okay, Everfrost, stopwatch, completed Seraphs. Like, that is some seriously big goal discrepancies, and that's without DFM having backed post-Baron, really, to get even more money.
And actually, one of the differences between previous mage item metas and this is Ebby is walking up to that bot tower. Might see ourselves a fight evolving. His gang is going forward.
Oh, here we go.
We have the Realm Warp.
That's going to be Ebby looking for some more. Won't really get in range, but it will zone Rascal Jesters off that tier 2. Hachimecha was looking for something as True Shot Barrage, and he really lands on a steal, and Hachimecha is taken out, and of course it was his Senegal. It was, of course, the Vizier. It was Hachimecha who fell to Xin Zhao. Ain't that a law-based execution? The Rune Prison lands, and there's no way out for Sol, or is there? He manages to escape for now, but it's a bounce house for Kinatsu, and he now falls Secrets in a difficult position outside of the base, and the base itself is broken apart. Yes, Sol survives, but he's on 20% HP. No flash, no heal, and Ebby's still looking for more. He'll finish the job his teammate started.
Well, and Ebby does get caught by the Shockwave. No turnaround kill just now, though. This could be the end of the game right here. DFM looking to strike first.
They are. They're going to at least get one turret. That is a massive boulder toss coming through to buy some space. Recap is going to be around. Remember, there is still no Shockwave, and DFM decide they're not going to push their luck. They'll take a Nexus tower on their way out, and they will back away. There's an Ocean Drake Light. They can put themselves to Soul Point, and this game is all but done by a final nail in the coffin. Let's watch this pretty extended fight from DFM.
So it starts off with the Realm Warp, which doesn't find much, but at the end of the day, Realm Warp, it's a luxury at this point. Hachimecha looks at the turnaround play, but just misses out, and this is one of the big differences between, well, I mean, not one of the less visible ones, I suppose, between ahead and behind. Being behind means you don't get that extra amount of vision. Doesn't mean it means that you don't get to push up and try and tank an extra skill shock. So you don't have the extra defensive stats. And while all of this is happening, DFM realized that, I mean, compared to previous itemization metas and stuff like that, you have stopwatches on 3 people now as well. If the fight even looks, sniffs, smells a bit weird, they just pop the stopwatch. They turn it around. They have that extra degree of safety, which is very cost efficient for a single fight, but DFM, all they need is a single fight now. We've seen them take down a Nexus turret, take down bottom inhibitors, take themselves up to that Soul Point. DFM have all the luxury in the world, and seemingly Rascal Jester do not have a way to even claw their way back into this. Singular picks are not going to hack it at this point because the ability to move across the map with double teleports, the ability to roam about too. DFM look like they're ready to just stomp on this game.
26.5 minutes in, and it is a 13,000, maybe 14,000 gold lead, really, over to DFM, which is pretty absurd at this point in the game. They are so far ahead, it is hard to categorize. Maybe just look at the inventories one more time now they've had a chance to go back and spend, and you can see the wealth of items they have right here, and Rascal Jesters definitely feeling a little bit bereft of all that damage they could really use right now.
Looking for maybe have to find themselves Genie's Wish to get themselves out of this kind of deficit, but I'm not sure they're going to need... well, I think they might need more than 3 wishes to find themselves a winning fight, as Rascal Jesters do not spot out the long flank. They're going in. They do catch 1.
They've got it onto 2, but that's a big crescent. Oh! And Steel gets 1 anyway. The wallets are just too big. Secret tried to look for the engage. Hatchet gets to the back line to Aria, who's out healing him. He's got a honey fruit as well. He lived through the burn. It's just Soul remaining. Credit where credit is due. Rascal Jesters tried, but the clown makeup is all painted on with the tears and the exaggerated face of despair. And it ain't exaggerated at this point of the game because it is a clean ace into a clean end. Detention FocusMe dismantle Rascal Jesters in game 1.
The luxury items right at the end, the stopwatch saving Aria. One of the key moments during it, we called it out, and DFM play to the line, they play to the limit. At least in the mid to late game. Early game, didn't mind to find as many increments as they might have wanted. DFM take that game by storm. Question is, they won that first game of that Juggernaut match. Can they see it out this time?
Exactly. It was similar kind of vibes. There are similar attempts here in terms of like writing the same script. But Heavy managed to control Kinatsu a bit better. The bot lane didn't get to snowball. Hatchemecha, a little bit of a non-factor. And DFM looking a little bit more like what we potentially expected of them. For us to break down, because we have a desk full of big brains to break it down for us. Cut to a quick break. We'll be back with them in a moment or two.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the desk. Mars One, Midnight, Melvin Izzle, and Joshi all the way. Oh my god, I did the wrong. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It's like cameras are reversed, and I don't understand that works. LJL here, recapping that game number 1 between Detention FocusMe facing off against Rascal Jesters in the 2021 Summer Finals. Joshi, coming straight to you, sir, because I have to. The pick and ban phase went very differently from how I was expecting, and all of us were.
Honestly, very different than how we were hoping. I was expecting a very competitive series, but it felt like it went wrong from the moment it started, right? We saw Rascal Jester come out with the
Yeah.
Renekton pick first, which I think in some regions is defensible, but Japan is not one of them, unfortunately. You have very small champion pools in the top lane. We've been seeing, again, Gnar, Renekton, Tom Kench, a couple more Gnars, and then every now and then you'll see something like a Gangplank pop out from like Oppaman. But
No, I don't know.
and yeah, a couple more Gnars, right? But the Renekton is bad into Gnar, and you didn't ban it. And it's something that we've already talked about where Evie, the most powerful top laner in the entire region, gets the most solo kills. And we saw he very nearly got multiple of them in this game just because of how dominant of a lane matchup he got and how strong he was. And when the Rise Vars are the first couple of things that are picked up, you're not even threatening to take away the Gnar because they're just able to pick as their third pick red side. So it feels like the Renekton just gave up everything that DFM could have possibly wanted, and Rascal Gesture just played directly into it.
I gotta come to you, Midnight, because you also have some choice words for another champion on Rascal Jester's side.
Yeah. I am very much disliking of the Jarvan. I think is the most diplomatic way to word this. I have always been under the belief that Jarvan is like Jarvan has always been a jungler in competitive, and I'm not going to say that you shouldn't ever lock in Jarvan competitively because it does have its merits. But the biggest problem, whenever I see a Jarvan in competitive, my first instinct is, hey, you've run out of junglers to play. Like, you've been banned out, they've stolen away the pick you want to pick, and you just got no idea what to lock in here.
Sure.
Because it can do so well, but it's very much like an Olaf. If you don't do well in the early game, you just sort of become a weird-looking minion, except that Jarvan's window, Olaf has maybe 20 minutes to get it done. 2 items. Jarvan, you don't have that. You have 10 minutes to be relevant as a jungler, and then things fall down very hill. And we saw how quickly things fell out of hand with the Xin Zhao in Steel's hands. He just made Hachimecha look irrelevant from start to finish.
Yeah, and Melvin Izzle, this is draft adaptation coming from DFM, something we've been calling for. And this is the most kind of medium version because, as Joshi already mentioned, they got to R1, R2, Varus Rise.
It's a loose adaptation. I think the biggest thing for me that in this draft I was looking at and going, okay, fair enough, is the fact that they warrant the Nidalee ban from Rascal Jester, and that's the one that I think is most likely to slip their way through, because we got to see a little bit of the Irelia yesterday, and we saw nothing but
We're never
the
seeing
Nidalee.
it again.
So exactly, I think that the Irelia is firmly on the, we don't have a good answer to this. I don't know if anybody has a good answer to this. At least with the Nidalee, it keeps the jungle pool a bit more open, and it means that we may get to see Hachimecha take the Xin Zhao back, despite it getting nerfed on this patch since we had the mini update between the series. I think that it's still one that they're going to be more than happy to play. We saw it this game from Steel, and it was still pretty damn good at what it's meant to do.
I've got a couple thoughts that we got to tackle here. One, we saw this very recently over here in North America. The counter to Irelia mid is Singe. Not even kidding. We saw it for the first time ever, and it destroyed the game because you can't do anything as Irelia into a Singe. Now, I don't expect that to be coming out today, but it is a fun fact. If any of you aspiring solo queue players are looking, don't blame me when you lose. It's a hard champion, but it is the answer. The other thing that I want to bring up is we got to look at the fact that, yes, DFM got everything they wanted. And so an important measuring stick we had to ask was, they got everything they wanted. If they don't destroy this game, we're going to have a really tough series on our hands. But DFM, we saw they got what they wanted, and they gave up 1 dragon, 1 Rift Herald, which didn't even take a turret, and 1 kill in the entire game. They just played the entire thing really cleanly, and so they've already shown they are here to play.
Well, we do need to talk about that. Gang did die once.
What a freaking intro, man.
Running it down.
Bring Kazu back.
Ruining my finals.
We want Kazu. We want Kazu. Melvin Izzle, to kind of set us up with how this game trajectory really went, just in the worst direction for Rascal Jester, I'm coming to you, sir. Can you break it down why it went so badly?
All right, so we got a little bit of a replay from that game right there, and this one, as you can see, is going to take place at the 16-minute mark. It's a relatively even game state, and I have to say that hesitantly, because if you look at the gold, DFM have already got themselves a good 3k gold lead in the pocket. It's not game ending. That is something that you can definitely still win fights through, but it means that you have to look at the itemization to really get the picture. And the most important one that I see down here for the items is actually this Umbral Glaive adaptation from Utapon, going for the Vision Denial. And you can see it on the minimap. Take a look at this bottom side quadrant for Rascal Jester. You'd think it was for DFM with how much vision is in there. There is absolutely no way for Rascal Jester to be aware of plays. Their only ward on this side of the map is this one right here that Kanatu is walking towards. But because this tower was slain when the Rift Herald fight happened, well, you're going to see it right now because it doesn't go well. You're not allowed to walk this far up on the map. This is no longer your jungle. And while you do get 2 flashes out of DFM members, that there was some debate on the mechanics of that one and if anything was needed to be used, you're still completely locked out for Rascal Jester, because as soon as everybody leaves, the only person you have info on is just Arya's going to push the wave. But guess what? That's a Rise of Realm Warp and TP available. So it doesn't actually help you too much and just allows these two to run through the jungle and clear out any vision on the way. You saw Secret attempting, trying to get some smatterings of wards down, but now there's no control, and they're trying to threaten Varus on the mid lane, but you just don't have the ability to, because as you can see, DFM have already set up, they're ready to flank. As soon as somebody steps out of position, they're going, and oh boy, they are most definitely going. And I believe it's Hachimecha that walks forward here, doesn't actually get caught and gets the ward down, so it looks okay, but they get dashed on, knocked up, dashed on, knocked up, stunned, and at this point, you think that maybe you could try and return some damage, but the issue is the global's still available for DFM. Ebby still has the teleport, Arya still has everything, and they've already started the Realm Warp to go here. So there's no way out for Secret. They flashed into this fight, trying to get something, and we saw plenty of these attempts from Rascal Jester to get back in the game. None of them really to any avail, as you can see here. They just have the stats at this point, and when you have the numbers on top of the stats, there's not too much outplay potential for Rascal Jester. It's one of the main things that you have to give credit for to DFM, because they consistently leveraged a numbers lead, along with the fact they had the base stats because of the gold that they were just getting.
This was just the Rascal Jester kind of struggling to catch up with them, right? This was just, they were always a step behind. I mean, absolutely. I think Joshi put it perfectly. Sip some tea. What can DFM do to just make the tea even hotter for you, Joshi?
I mean, I think the big thing is, when I look at it, they just need to be doing more of the same. Whereas for Rascal Jester, you said they were always a step behind, and I feel that this is true while they were skipping steps, right? We talked about the Rift Herald a little bit. I know Midnight wants to talk about it a lot, but there are some waves you got to give up. There are some structures you need to sacrifice, and then there are others that break your economy open.
And I feel like this is a good point to talk about the Rift Heralds here. So
Yeah.
specifically, I feel like the second Rift Herald may or may not need to be talked about, specifically in that for the likes of Rascal Jesters, they committed 5 members for the Rift Herald. And then while all that's happening, well, like, oh, we've got to make sure we get this objective that's super, super useful and important. Uniform's bot side solo taking a turret, which is solo gold, solo experience, for a very strong Varus, and suddenly like, well, okay, well, what are we getting? We've got a Rift Herald. What are we going to do with it? How much turret plate? Oh, it's 17 minutes. We can't get platings off Rift Herald. Maybe we can get some objectives. Didn't really do that either. And so like everything sort of just fell apart. It's like a Jenga tower, and unfortunately, too many blocks from the bottom. The whole thing just collapses in on itself.
We'll have to wait and see how Rascal Jester recover, come back, refortify their mental game, and move forward into game number 2. But before we get there, gentlemen, we're going to go over to a short little break, because when we come back, we'll be giving our impressions and expectations going into game number 2. Don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen.